If I had to name my top 5 favorite movie directors, it'd be pretty easy. Nolan, Villeneuve, Cuarón, Wojcik, and Fincher, for sure. So when a fellow filmmaker asked me if I wanted to help DP a short film that he was working on, inspired by a scene in David Fincher's Se7en, and test some new lights with him, it was a no-brainer. So I drove up to Burbank for a one-day shoot with Rubidium Wu, who you might recognize from his YouTube channel, Crimson Engine. The goal of the shoot was to recreate the style, lighting, and multi-camera setup of this scene in Se7en. Brad Pitt, Morgan Freeman, 3 detectives having a verbal standoff about a potential serial killer case and who should work it. In this video, I'll break down how we planned our version, how we lit each scene, where we placed the cameras to match David Fincher's style, and whether using the C700 over the C200 was really worth it. And then I'll end with the scene, the final short film scene that we shot. Instead of trying to recreate this iconic movie, Rubidium instead decided to use it as inspiration for an original script that he wrote. He then casted 3 different actors and used the small corner of his home office to do some set design to make it look like it was kind of a police office. Now, when you're making short films on a budget, 3 things you don't usually have are space, time, or a large crew. You're usually cramped into the one room you could find that would work. You're always in a hurry trying to get everything done, and you don't really have extra hands to help. And what tends to go out in the window when you don't have those luxuries is good lighting, which is really what you need. It's kind of a must-have if you want to make something feel cinematic. So with those same limitations for this shoot, self-imposed, for lighting, we used lightweight, high power, but incredibly versatile, flexible LED lights from Intellytech, who also sponsored this entire project. We used 3 of their light cloth products, the 50, 100, and the Mega. Now, I've used these style of flexible LED panels in the past, and here's what I specifically liked about these Intellytech ones. Number 1, they were bicolor, foldable, remote controlled, and they could use a V-mount battery in case you didn't have a wall outlet there. Number 2, they're twice as bright and about half the cost as the other mats I've used that are the same size. Number 3, they communicate with each other so you can kind of scale up to using more lights if you have a bigger job, bigger set to light. Number 4, they pack down really small into their cases. And number 5, they automatically come with the softbox skirt, diffusion, and some other modifiers so you don't need a whole grip truck to get the light to look how you want it to. To match both the framing and lighting setup from the scene in Se7en, we put an actor at a desk with a large window behind him. To light that, we started by creating a constant light source outside the window. Because it was a cloudy day, you don't want to mess with the light changing, and we used a 2-foot by 4-foot light cloth Mega at full power. It's super powerful, and it was pretty easy to set up too. We had it at daylight balance at around 5600 Kelvin. Inside, since Fincher likes to use a lot of practical lights, we used a few lamps as well with tungsten bulbs in them. These were going to be seen in camera and would help motivate any other lights we placed off camera. For the interior lights, we used both a 100 and a 50 sized light cloth. We set those to tungsten at 3200 Kelvin to match those practicals that were already kind of lighting the scene. In between changing camera angles, we would move the lights if they were now in the background of the shot, or to provide a better hair light. We could also easily dim or brighten each light depending on the blocking and placement or the exposure levels based on like the aperture we're using or the lenses or what have you. Now in the 2.5-minute scene from Se7en we were using as inspiration, I counted no less than 12 different camera angles that David Fincher used on the 3 actors. And that's not counting any that didn't make the final cut either. That's for a 2.5-minute scene. So when it came to planning out this 4-page scene, we had all 3 actors with key lines or sections of the script we knew they'd probably need to be on screen for in the final edit. So you might just assume, well, let's just film those parts with each angle to save time. But personally, I think running through the whole scene with each camera angle we set up allows us to capture reactions, side glances, and just kind of other options from each actor in both wide angles and close-ups. And it just lets the actors play through the scene a bunch of times and really get a good rhythm. Here's the original top-down plan Rubidium made for the 7 camera angles we'd probably need to film from, and we actually ended up shooting 6 and using all of them. We filmed using the Canon Cinema Prime lenses on a Canon C700 full frame and a Canon C200 crop sensor. I mainly pulled focus on every shot, and I couldn't rely on face tracking autofocus like I usually can, which was kind of a bummer. So let's watch the short film, and while you're watching, I want you to guess whether what I'm showing you was shot on the Canon C200 or the Canon C700, since we ran through all the scenes and all the angles with both cameras, but this cut only shows one. Okay, here it is.
What you got?
Thought this was one-on-one.
I didn't ask to be here.
You said you had something on the Molaski killing. Sims is the lead.
I heard it telling you private.
This isn't high school, Hawkins. We're all supposed to be on the same team.
You remember Frank Victor, the Marsh killings?
Yeah. I burnt down his house, and we found him and 5 other bodies.
Well, I was reading the reports the other day. The other bodies, his victims, were burned before the house caught fire.
Doesn't matter.
Deep in the coroner's report, they were also missing their fingerprints.
We're not supposed to understand the killers. We're supposed to catch them.
So this guy Victor, he kills 5 people. He's careful, considered, you might even say professionally. Then as the heat reaches up, he kills a 6th. Leaves a trail of clues back to his house. We arrive, he sets the place on fire.
So, everyone gets sloppy eventually, Hawkins. I mean, these people are unwell. They're mentally unstable.
You're trying to open up a closed case, my case. That's great police work.
Anyone could have closed that case. That is the point.
Listen to Ms. Marvel here.
Shut it, Sims. Hawkins, get to the point.
I dug some more. Going back to 1978, there are 4 other cases. When the first killings are meticulous, then the final killing is butt shot and leads us there. And he dies or is killed in the arrest. It only happens in this city. I couldn't find a single other instance.
We have the highest closure rate of multiple homicides in the country. It's why I have this job.
With respect, Captain, I think that's wrong.
I heard enough of this crank. I need to get back to work.
Sit down, Sims. Okay, Hawkins, you got yourself a lot of rope there. I'd like to see what you're gonna do with it.
I believe that a single individual has been committing murders for almost 40 years. Kills people that won't be missed. As soon as the heat gets too much, he kills his final victim and frames them for his previous crimes.
That would be over 50 murders.
Then we know. As we close in, he sheds his skin and disappears like a serpent. We convict the dead guy, close the case, and pat ourselves on the back. And it starts again.
This doesn't leave this room.
Do you have any evidence of this crazy snake killer theory?
No. But I've seen him.
She's seen him. So what happens next? Who's the serpent? I don't know about you, but I'm kind of hooked on this story, and I want to know where Rubidium takes it. And for what camera we used, if you guessed the C200, you were right. We actually barely noticed a difference in image quality once it was on a computer, shooting in RAW on both. So we ended up going with the C200 footage because it was easier for me to actually nail focus because the lenses were talking to the camera and I could get that focus confirmation. So maybe you don't need to spend more money on a big camera. For me, operating the C700 versus the C200, other than the fact that the C700 is massive and there's way more buttons and control and I was less familiar with it, is that you need to use a wider lens on a C200 to get the same framing as you do on a C700 because the C200 has a smaller crop sensor, C700 has a bigger sensor. So if I'm using a 50 mil on the C700, I would have to put a 35 mil on the C200 to get that same framing, to get the same look, even if the cameras are sitting in the exact same spot. This is going to be the same thing with the new C500 Mark II that Canon just announced. A 24 mil on a C200 would be basically a 35 mil on a full frame. So just something to consider when you're choosing between a full frame or crop sensor to buy or rent and what lenses you'll need to kind of go along with them. The biggest thing I learned from this shoot is that it's way harder than it seems to both pull focus and frame your shot at the same time using longer lenses like a 50 millimeter or an 85 millimeter. Luckily, we were using Canon prime lenses that shared that dual pixel autofocus information, so I got some manual focus confirmation on my screen on the C200, which was pretty clutch for filming with shallow depths of field. And since our crew was only 3 people, Rubidium being the director, I DP'd it, I was on the camera. I was also doing audio, so we lobbed up all the actors and I tried to monitor it while we were recording, but just too many jobs all at once, and one person filming BTS so we could put this kind of video together. But if I were to do it again, I would have a dedicated audio person just focused fully on that. And that's the thing about running guns, smaller short film projects. You just don't have the crew to do all the individual jobs. We were moving the lights and doing audio and pulling focus, all that stuff all at once. So you kind of have to be a jack of all trades if you want to work with a small crew and be able to do all these things. So it's helpful just to learn about everything, learn about audio, learn about lighting, learn about cameras, all of that. Thank you, Rubidium, for having me involved in this project, and thank you to Intellytech for providing lights for us to use in this project and making it possible. If you want to learn more about the specific lights and some of their features that we used on this project, you can watch Rubidium's video right here. And to subscribe to my channel for more videos on filmmaking, photography, and how to earn a living with your camera, you can go right here. I've been Wojcik, and thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.